Just remember that, lad. There's a small bit of a needle there.
Now, come on, Mayo, you've got to get Andy Moran into the game.
Listen back to Eden, and now they're really roaring.
And I can tell you, that there won't be a cow milk in County Clare for at least a week.
Hello everyone, you're very welcome to the Irish Examiner Gaelic Football Show. My name is Paul Rouse and I'm joined by the former Armagh footballer Oisín McConville, by the former Kerry footballer Bryan Sheehan, and by the sports editor and football manager of the Douglas minor football team, Leen. We are here to talk about club games. We're going to talk about the managerial merry-go-round, which has seen some extraordinary appointments. We're going to talk about those processes, but we're going to start with what is quite striking news in the last 2 weeks, and it's the return to inter-county football, as announced by Dessie Farrell, of Jack McCaffrey and Paul Mannion. Brian, what did you think when you saw that?
I suppose a bit of a worry for Kerry, to be honest. I suppose in particular, if you look at the calibre of Paul Mannion, if he was playing above in Croke Park in the All-Ireland semi-final, would Kerry got over the line? I think he's that good of a footballer. I think he would have made a massive, massive difference to that Dublin team. Worrying news for the rest of the county or the rest of the country. I would definitely say, but Jack McCaffrey as well, experience, speed. He's going to take marking as a wing back. You don't usually go marking wing backs, but he's the kind of a fella that you're going to have to put a plan in place to look after him. I suppose the only concern is that he hasn't played a whole pile of football, but I'd imagine if he's getting back into the swing of things, he has the whole league to get under his belt before he hits the ground running come championship. But I think it's a massive coup for Dublin to get the two boys back into the setup, and I think it's going to be a massive addition to the Dublin, because let's face it, they weren't far off winning the All Ireland. They lost to Kerry. Missing
with the last kick of the game, really.
Yeah, with last kick of the game. Missing Con O'Callaghan as well. So, if you bring Con back into this, Jack back into this, Paul back into it, that's a serious Dublin unit. So, it's going to be great news for Dubs.
Why do you think they came back, Oisín?
I think it's just one thing I was thinking was, as being part of the Leinster Championship this year, it'll help them bridge the gap between themselves and Wicklow. An immediate reaction to me going into Leinster was to get the two boys back in. Why did they go back in? I think probably whenever you sit back and you watch it, you think maybe you're not going to miss it as much as you actually do. I think time away makes you realise that the opportunities you have through inter-county football are very precious. And as much as you feel as if it's the right thing to do to walk away, to a bit of self-care, a bit of, concentrating on yourself, there's still a massive draw. You know what I mean? Like, I think this year, as much as, people give out about the split season and how early the championship was, there was an unbelievable focus, I thought, on, the latter stages of the championship, because there didn't seem to be a hell of a lot else happening sports-wise. And I think that semi-final, if you're sitting there and you have the opportunity to play in it, you haven't played in it, I think there's an unbelievable draw to get back into that. And I think also to be part of maybe the next building process as far as Dublin are concerned, and knowing in your heart of hearts that you could be the difference between the Dubs winning and losing. And club football fills the void. There's no denying it, but there's nothing like, inter-county football. There's nothing like the big games, big semi-finals, finals, and I think that draw was just too much for them in the end. And obviously,
I think it's something else as well, Oisín. I think it's something else. I think they saw Kerry winning the All Ireland. Yeah. I don't know the two lads very well. I know them a little bit. I know Paul Mannion hardly at all, but I know Jack a little bit from UTD, and they're both tremendous fellas, like really, really great characters. And I think Jack is one of the finest fellas who I ever met. He's a really singular man who is he's a credit to himself and he's a credit to his family and all of that. And I think the challenge for him is more than for Paul Mannion, because I think it's harder to come back as a back than it is as a forward. And I think the example of Rory O'Carroll shows that fairly clearly. And Paul has been playing at a really high level of club football over the last couple of years. And I think it's a challenge. Do you see this working out for them?
Yeah, I think I can't see any, downside to this for Dublin, really. And even though you're talking about Jack McCaffrey, I think within those guys there has to be a serious drive as an individual in order to turn things around and make them happen. And as you say, there's another side to the Jack McCaffrey thing, because I think in life, the way his life is, the responsibility he has in his job.
As a doctor, for those who don't know.
As a doctor. I think, logistically, it's probably more difficult for him to commit and get back in there. But in order to make that happen, he probably has had to turn a lot of things around. He's probably have to call in a favour or two as he goes along. But I think challenging yourself like that, and the way he wants to challenge himself, to see Kenny get back in there. And I know you talk about it's tough as a defender, but Jack McCaffrey isn't renowned as being a defender, really. He's renowned as, cutting holes through defences. He's renowned as somebody who has the pace to get through the most packed of defences. And I think the other thing about Jack McCaffrey is he seems to me, and I don't know the fella, but he seems to me to be very mentally strong. And if he's that mentally strong, then he won't accept going back in there and being a bit part. And when you have that driving force and backed up by the quality the two lads have, then it's a no-brainer for Dublin. I'd say Desi Farrell is a very relieved individual to have them back.
I think that's right. One second, Brian. I think that's right about Jack. He's really mentally strong. I disagree about his defending. I think he became an excellent tackler. I know he's renowned for going forward, but he was brilliant at showing lads the line and turning it back out and stripping lads. He became an excellent defender as time went on. Brian, sorry.
Yeah, no, sorry. Just kind of follow up there for what Oisín was saying is defenses aren't just going to go back into this for the sake of going back into it. They know what it takes to play at this level. They know the commitment that's been involved in it. So this isn't just a whim or look, we'll go back and we'll have a go and we'll see how we get on with it. They know what's involved in commitment that goes to playing at the county level, and they know in particular the commitment that is expected of them and the standards that are set by Dublin. So I like for them, just this isn't something that look, we'll just go back and we'll have a cut off and we'll see how we get on. There's big commitments involved in this, and I think one of the big things for Jack over the last couple of years was the fact that his job. We're after coming out the back end of hopefully the back end of a pandemic, where I don't think his work allowed him to be involved in football from the point of view of being involved in dressing rooms, mixing with players. I don't think that was going to happen with COVID over the last 2 years in the job that he was inside working in the hospital. I just think it was never going to mix. And I think he had to make the call what was more important, his job or the football. So I think that's where that probably came from in his perspective. But look, as I said, these two fellas are coming back into this setup, knowing what's involved. They know the work, they know the commitment is there. They've been there, they've done that. I just think that they'll hit the ground running. I don't think there'll be a fear of these fellas. They know what it's going to take to get to the level of fitness required. Like you said, Paul Mannion's been playing good competitive football, but he's such a natural footballer. He'll come back into this and he'll hit the ground running. There'll be no fear of him.
I'm just wondering, when they go back into the change room, is it going to be the same change room as they left? And there is a question mark over that. So I suppose it's up to Dublin to make sure that the standards and the way that those two boys, the change room those two boys would have left, that it's as close as it possibly can be to that whenever they walk back in. So that adds a little layer of pressure to Desi and the boys to make sure that it's right. But it looked as if it was getting there. Obviously, towards the latter end of the championship, they were only beaten by a point.
That works two ways, though, too, Oisín, in the sense of I would imagine Desi will be looking to them as well to actually bring what they brought. I mean, look, in any list, when if Jack or Paul drew up a list of pros and cons, and literally from their age to their desire, and I think Paul's right to the fact that do they really want to sit aside and watch Kerry start building dominance again? I think the list of pros way outweighed the list of cons. But in terms of the standards, whether it's a different dressing room or not, I don't think they're the type of players anyway, Paul, are they, that would go back in and expect to be expect to be brought up to speed. They're the ones that have actually been there, done that. They're the ones that will actually come in. There'll be players in that dressing room looking to them now to set the standards as well.
I know you're a keen student of football and history, Tony, and I want to frame up the great Kerry team of the 80s who did 4 in a row, lost the next 2 very narrowly, like by obviously late goal against Offaly, late goal against Cork in 82 and 83. So 2-year gap, they came back and did 3 in a row. Is this something you might see possibly happening again, Dublin?
I don't know. I mean, the very popular narrative after this year's All-Ireland was Kerry were the best team, but there's no dominance there stretching into the next 3 or 4 years. And I just wonder, is that because people feel that there are a lot of other contenders, or do people feel that this was a 1 in a row Kerry team? When Kerry won the All-Ireland, and again, there's another. Do
you think it's a 1 in a row Kerry team?
I don't, but then again, I think as a reference point, Paul, it's more relevant to go to 2014 than to go back to the 80s, because 2014 Kerry won an All-Ireland, and by Eamon Fitzmaurice's own words, they were actually better in 2015 than they were in 2014. Brian would know this better than me. They played fantastic football, but on they picked a really bad day to have a bad day in the All-Ireland final against Dublin. So, I mean, it's very facile talk to be talking about, is it 1 in a row, is it 3 in a row? Right now, looking ahead to 2023, I'd say Kerry are as well prepped as anything. There's a few, I've seen some county championship games already. There's at least 3 or 4 guys being talked up as guys that would be spirited straight into the side for the National League. So that's obviously going to create a good vibe there. Right now, they're the side that needs to be knocked off. I'm whether they win, whether they're the best team, whether they can do 2, 3, 4 in a row. I don't think they're a 4 in a row team, if that's the question you're asking me. But you never know with these things. I would imagine after 1983 down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, I'd say Dwyer and the boys thought this is done. They're after losing 2 heartbreaking losses, 2 last-minute goals. You've done your 4 in a row. You never did the 5 in a row. Dwyer has said many times since, if they hadn't lost in 82, 83, they certainly wouldn't have done 84, 85 and 86. So there are various motivations and motivating factors in terms of what you do and don't do. But I think Kerry are in a really good place going into 2023. But there's no doubt in the world Dublin will improve. But doesn't that also improve the likes of Kerry and all the other contenders? Doesn't that also raise the bar for everybody else to say, okay, I see the cards now that Dublin are after putting down the table. Let's get our stuff together here. Let's get prepped. Let's get planning. I think it's good for football. I think Jack McCaffrey is a sight to behold on a football field. I really do. I've been watching Paul Mannion with Kilmacud over the last 6 months. I think Jack McCaffrey is a sight to behold on any football field, and I think it's great that he's back. Yeah,
for the greater good of the game, it's a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful thing to see. What's also been wonderful to see, and we're not going to get mired into a split season conversation here. There's been enough talk about it. We have to wait until the split season has tried for a year, for 2 years before we pass judgment on something. We're in the early stages of it. At least that's how I would see it. But the club championships. Well, let's just look in the round at the club championships. Brian, have you? What's been the feeling around the Kerry Championship? Or the Kerry Championships? There seems to be quite a remarkable structure down there.
Well, I don't understand how people can't get their head around it. It's very straightforward. I suppose I'm grown up.
I agree.
The whole time. You've got.
Well, explain it to everyone there who's listening. What is the structure in Kerry?
Is it 8 senior clubs, Tony, if I'm mistaken? Is it?
Yeah. I mean,
And that's it. So you have 8 senior clubs that are senior championship clubs. So
I'm lost already.
they have their own club structure. In the club championship, you have your senior club championships, which is all your senior clubs. Then you have your intermediate, junior, novice, or junior, premier, junior B, and every club then plays in their own
Grade.
Grade, exactly.
Yeah.
Then when it comes around to the county championship, you have those 8 senior clubs who are senior. They go on their own the county championship, and the rest of the county then are amalgamated in their district boards. South Kerry come together, the 9 clubs of South Kerry. Mid Kerry come together with their selection of clubs. East Kerry get together. Like East Kerry now, for example, have all of the Legion, Kilcommon, Rackmore, all combined. You were excluded in the Crokes, who are obviously a senior club. Spa are a senior club. They're not in with East Kerry. So they're East Kerry teams, but they're on their own, the county championship. And that's what it is. But the great thing about the county championship, I think, in Kerry, is every person gets an opportunity, and no matter what club level grade you're at, to play in the county championship. So if I just take, for example, Valentia Island, who are struggling, who don't have a senior team at the moment down here, players that can play with South Kerry, and they get the opportunity to play in the county
They play in the junior championship as a club, and then they play as an amalgamation.
With South Kerry, exactly. So if I just take the example of 2 fellas from Valentia, in Brendan O'Sullivan and Paul Sullivan, they're 2 brothers. We won the county championship in 2015. These fellas were playing in Valentia, down at the bottom in Division 5. There's not a hope in hell they ever be looked at from the point of view of Kerry playing Division 5 football. They wouldn't be on the radar. They wouldn't be sending out playing for a manager for the likes of Memphis Morris to see them. But all of a sudden they're thrown in with South Kerry. South Kerry win the county championship in 2015, and all of a sudden Brendan and Paul are inside training with Kerry and playing with Kerry the following year. I think that's the benefit of what we have down here in Kerry, is that every player has an opportunity to represent, to play in the county championship. And I think if you look even out at the moment in the Khmer district, where Khmer are gone senior, Timpanora are gone senior, that district board has more or less been dismantled, because you've 2 sis Kilgarvan who have no clubs, who are strong enough to field a district board team. But those players are allowed to pick and choose. They can go play with South Kerry, or they can go play with East Kerry, and they get a choice. So they get the opportunity. They get the opportunity to play county championship football.
And the county champions represent Kerry in the Munster Championship,
They
except
do- no,
for
no.
the regional team.
No, yeah,
Yes.
exactly. That's one of the reasons for the club championship, Paul.
Okay.
You have a club championship first, and those club champions represent Kerry if a divisional side goes on and wins the county championship.
Oisín, I hope you're taking notes here now, because we don't have any quiz about this.
No, lad, in fairness, I think the key part of this, and yeah, I agree, I know what you're saying. Sometimes when you're talking about a different county, it can be confusing. The key point is what Bryan said, and I'd back it 100%. And not every county can say it, Paul. The lowest player in the lowest grade gets a chance to play senior county championship football in Kerry.
If they aspire to it. Yeah,
If
you've
they're
created
good enough.
it's a classic player pathway model where you can aspire to be, the structure is there to.
Correct.
And I think what it also does as well is it also strengthens the county championship, because you've got competitive games, competitive teams. If you weren't playing at that standard, the standard of football wouldn't be as good. You're now getting.
Yeah, so this is the big question. This is where I'm getting at here. Does it raise the standard of football in Kerry, the structure, which is followed?
I tell you what, the club championship does that of itself. The club championship is ridiculously cutthroat in Kerry. There's only 8 senior teams. There's 2 groups of 4, and there's a relegation every year. So you have literally Dr. Crokes were in the relegation final last year against Legion. They were 60 minutes from being relegated to the intermediate grade. So it's that cutthroat. The county championship, I would probably argue, Bryan, the standard is high, but it's not as cutthroat in the sense that, for instance, East Kerry are runaway favourites for the championship this year, because it's just a cyclical thing, Paul. Their amalgamation at the moment is, even without Spa and Crokes, is ridiculously strong. I was at their game against Strand Road a couple of weeks ago, and there was a laughable stat that, and Bryan used to play in goals in his younger days. They had the choice of 4 Kerry keepers to play in goals. Now Shane Ryan actually played full forward for them, the actual Kerry keeper. But you have all those strengths in East Kerry, plus the very small and insignificant detail of the Fossa club as well, who happened to furnish David and Paddy Clifford and throw them into the mix for his career.
So is the Fussett club has played in the junior championship this year?
Yeah, they're in the semi-final.
In the semi-final.
Yeah.
I know people who have travelled from Dublin to watch Fussett play in the Kerry Junior Football Championship. I know people who have travelled. I know of a family who've travelled from West Cork over to the field in Fussett so that the young lad could play on the same field that David Clifford played on.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, my cousins, all my cousins are above in Cortown in Meath, just outside Kells. You'd know it well, Oisín, up that side of the country. And they come down on holidays every year, and they rang me the weekend they were coming down, and they said, what games are on this weekend? It was a club championship weekend, Brian. And I said, actually, it's a great game. We're only 3 or 4 miles outside Tralee. I said, there's a great game inside in town. I said, Stacks are playing Cairns O'Rahilly's Senior Club Championship, cracking game, local derby, 6:30 Saturday evening, perfect for you. And he says to me, is David Clifford's crowd playing at all? I says, oh, they are. I says, but they're Premier Junior now. I says, they're playing out in Castle Gregory, I think, on the Sunday. And that was it. Abandoned Tralee, went out to Castle Gregory on the Sunday, sent me a load of pictures on the Sunday evening of his wife was doing video of, and this is happening, Paul, every single time Fussett are playing. The minute the final whistle is over, there's hundreds of kids running onto the field, surrounding David and Paddy Clifford. And in fairness to David, I don't know where he's getting the patience, but not once have I ever heard even of him brushing somebody off or saying, look, leave me alone. He seems to stand there time after time after time, and it's incredible. I mean, purely as a Kerry supporter, I'd be worried about the wear it will have on him eventually, because the guy is still only 23. He's now started full-time employment, by the way, in St. Brendan's, teaching in Killarney. But it's bonkers what's actually going on down in Kerry. I mean, he's literally a one-man carnival. I mean, I would imagine when Fussett are playing away from home, the home club must absolutely be rubbing their hands every Saturday or Sunday. They must be setting up burger stalls, coffee shops, jersey sales, the lot, because they're multiplying their attendances like by 10 every time he actually shows up. And I'll just give you a little bit of local intrigue. They're in the semi-final of the Premier Junior Championship. They're on the other side of the draw. They're actually Fussett are playing Ardfert. And my crowd, Ballymac, who probably would be favourites for the championship, are playing Listroy in the other semi-final. And if the two of them get through, David Clifford's mother is from Ballymac. So he would literally be coming home. So there's a very ambivalent attitude, as you can imagine, in Ballymac towards the Cliffords. It's kind of like, well, they should really be playing here like for us. So if the two of them were to meet in a final, I think it'd be very interesting.
Yeah, I have a mother from Road. We haven't really spoken since last Sunday's county final. I knew things were bad when you had the medals that her grandfather and that her father and great and grandfather won, going back 40, 50, and then 100 years out on the table. When I arrived down, I thought this is not going to be
going to go well.
And so it turned out. Oisín, the Monaghan Championship, you're embroiled in that. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah. 10 teams split into 2 groups of 5. Top team goes straight through the semi-finals, and then 2 plays 3 from one side and 3 plays 2 from the other side. So in quarterfinals, and then it's semi-final stage. So that's you're in now, and then there's relegation.
You're the manager of Inniskeen Grattan's.
Yeah.
What's the story?
The story is we are in the semi-final. We play Scottstown, who've won the last 400 Monaghan championships. So we play them in the semi-final on Sunday. They beat us last year fairly convincingly in the semi-final. They won on penalties at the weekend, the quarter-final. Everybody I meet is telling me that they're well back from where they were, but personally I don't really see that, because you're looking through the prism of, what we are doing and what they're doing and where they're at and where we're at. And then you look at the players that they have and the experience that they have. But look, it's nice actually to be there. It's Clonus, so it's a big occasion for all club footballers at the weekend. It's a double header, so it's one to look forward to.
You're not putting 15 men behind the ball, you know.
Only because I can't get 16.
Yeah. Can I? Obviously, Scottstown are very successful, and Inniskeen have a long tradition in the Monaghan Championship. And for those people who don't know, the poet Paddy Kavanagh played in goal for Inniskeen most famously. But beyond that, it's a long-standing traditional club in Monaghan. Do they really? Do the players believe, or are they a semi-final team? By that I mean, do they have their clearly? So I've seen them play, right, and they look like there's a lot of good footballers there who are good enough to get to a county semi-final. Do they have the belief and the ability to get to a final and win that final?
Well, I think the fact that they now have become a bit more consistent in that this is, the third semi-final in a row, I think probably they're starting to believe. Whether they believe or not, just unfortunately, as a manager, you just don't know that until the ball's thrown in. I would say that we lacked belief in certainly last year. We were riding the crest of a wave the first year. We were actually absolutely horrendous in the first half. We played a semi-final 2 years ago. We were horrendous. We were getting beat by 8 or 9, and we scored 116 in the second half of the game. So we, they, as you say, like ability-wise, the ability is there. It's just adding the next couple of layers to that. And again, as I say, if I had the answer to it, I'd be a lot more settled and sleeping a lot better than I am. But it's really down to how you react to the situations that you put in at the weekend and the big games.
What's it like to go into a club as an outside manager?
I didn't find any upheaval whatsoever. I think the initial thing is to get to know the people around the club. I suppose it's different for me. It takes me about 15 minutes to get from my house to Inniskeen. I would say that both the Cross community and Inniskeen community are quite similar in a lot of ways. They're fairly rural. They have Inniskeen for anybody who will have they usually take Kerry there, the National League, when they go up there. So the setup and the conditions that the players are playing under and everything else. It has absolutely everything. It's an unbelievable club. The people that are working in the background are unreal, and there's a hunger for success, and that is, as far as they're concerned, winning the senior championship. So that'll be the drive, and that will continue to be the drive behind the club. What's it like to go into a club? As I say, the biggest thing is getting to know the individuals. And you expect the bounce, okay? So the bounce is the initial thing, but unless there's a bit of substance behind that initial bounce, you're probably not gonna, you're not gonna be able to maintain it. But I've loved my time there. It's been great, and as well, I suppose, I'm working with lads who have a history of winning things. They've won minor titles and stuff like that. So, and a minor A title, which I don't think they'd ever won before. So, I'm lucky because I've maybe 6, 7, 8 of those players who've all come through, and they are probably leading the thing now.
Well, so there's similarities to a point, and there's success to a point, but there's two towns 15 minutes apart. Crossmaglen, multiple All-Ireland winners, let alone Armagh Championship winners. Why have, in recent history, Crossmaglen been successful and Inniskeen haven't?
Well, Inniskeen also won an intermediate All-Ireland as well, so they have a little bit of history, as far as being able to achieve these things. But I think it comes down to a numbers game. I think, it's, Cross just would have a bigger pick. They probably have more players playing. In a scheme.
It's not mentality, so.
Is it mentality? I suppose a little bit of it is mentality, but I would argue that unless we, broke the duck in 1997, I'm not sure if there would have been All Irelands in 2011. So you have to, there's somebody has to cross the line. Somebody has to change things, and when you change things, then the people who are coming behind you have a look at that and are inspired by that. Like I remember, I often talk about Paul McCune. He was captain in 2011. He was 23 when he was captain, and I remember before we went out one day, he says, I remember going in to watch Oisín and Tony Mack and John Mack and Francie, and we were all in the change room still playing, and he said, I remember going in the first time he's won All Ireland, I was on my father's shoulders. And he probably thought that was a great thing to say, but I was thinking, Jesus, how old are we? It's a time for us to get out of the change room. But it just shows you, though, that's the thing that he took with and run with. And we probably got, for every All Ireland we won, we probably got 3-4 clinkers to come in and join the panel from various grades, whether it be 18s, 16s, 14s, whatever it was at that time. So that's a huge thing. Somebody has to break the duck.
That's how tradition works, isn't it? That's the whole thing about tradition. You're not beaten by a jersey. You're beaten by the expectation level of success and by the manner in which success pulls people into you. Isn't that really how tradition works when it works properly? It is, and it just takes an unbelievable effort to cross the line the first time, and then it's never as difficult after that.
Yeah. That's I mean, I think that's, you see that, Oisín, all over the place. Somebody has to put down the marker initially, whether you're going back 10, 20, 30, 40 years. I mean, that's what builds, one word is tradition. I think you're probably accurate, Paul, in saying that's what builds expectation, because that Paul McCune then is in a dressing room where he expects to win. And I think that's the difference between what you're talking about, Paul, in terms of in a scheme. In terms of expectation, in terms of being there, done that. Every county has those clubs that they actually carry. There's an old saying in Cork, which I hate, to be honest with you, but it's an old saying about, throwing the jersey out on the gate, frighten the opposition basically before the game's even started. I think every county has those, and you look at Crossmaglen, it doesn't really matter what Crossmaglen team goes out. If you're the opposition, I think you're already 5% on the back foot. That's the difference, isn't it? But it's getting to the point where you have that 5 or 10% is the critical thing.
It's unbelievable the way that wanes, though. You know what I mean?
agree.
A little period of you not being maybe as dominant as you once were, and I'll refer to this, and we probably have referred to it before. When the things started to go wrong with United, and the aura started to leave, it's amazing the teams that came and just, were able to turn United over in Old Trafford, and you, like, for years you never really seen as that was going to happen. And I see it with a lot of teams who are right at the top. A good few teams in Ulster actually right at the top, and all of a sudden then there's absolutely zero fear of them, and that's where things start to change. But the tradition never stops. It just takes the next group of hungry guys who are gonna put you back up there. And when you get back up there, then you get, the old memories come back, and the aura around the jersey does come back.
Yeah, but I think an awful lot of that is down to the certain characters that's inside in the dressing room that's setting the standard. And I suppose I can only speak from my own experience in my own club, that when I walk in the dressing room door, Maurice Fitzgerald was playing with us, and all of a sudden you have an expectation as to, right, he knows what is required to win. My first year involved, I was 15 years of age, I was playing in goal with the club, and we went on to win the intermediates in Kerry. We won the County League Division 1, and we won 3 Soccer Championships. And all of a sudden I'm here 15 years of age, and I'm getting introduced to winning a Division 1 county title, winning intermediates, winning 3 Soccer Championships in a row, and all of a sudden then that hunger, that success, I got a taste of it. And I speak about it with Kerry winning the All-Ireland this year. They got that taste for success. And that's where I'm really hoping that they finally have that taste of success and they want more of it. That they're not just going to say, oh, I won my medal and that's great, put in my back pocket and I'll be forever known as an All-Ireland winner. No. And I think that's the one thing we had a culture in our dressing room, and I think it came from like Morris, and it came from other senior players within the club of what was expected of you. And I think then what happens is when you see younger fellas coming in and you can get a few fellas and integrate them into the setup, and they all of a sudden realize, okay, this is what it takes to win. This is the standard that was set by so-and-so in the dressing room. And like you said, Oisín, when the young fellas came into the dressing room and they saw the standards that were set by the likes of yourself and the McEntees, all of a sudden they knew what it takes to win. But you set the culture of what it takes to win. I think that's massive in the setup is, the one thing we always kind of said in Kerry was you always leave the jersey in a better place. And I think you have to set standards within the county setup, within your club, that when you walk away and leave it, you've left that jersey in a better place, and that whoever comes in to take your jersey, he knows the standards that are expected of you. He then has to raise the standards again, and when he moves on, he leaves the jersey in a better place for somebody else stepping into it. But I think an awful lot of cultures, it depends on the setup and the individuals within the club, within the team as well. You have to have a kind of a leader or a father figure, I believe, within the team as well to bring these young fellas along and set the standards.
It's
Tony,
not
you were talking.
Sorry, Oisín, off you go.
No, Tony was talking about, guys going from all over the country to go and watch David Clifford. We had a man from Brian's club who used to come up. Still does on a regular basis. I remember him standing under the lights one night, and in Cross, we don't really do strangers that great. And I remember somebody saying, somebody needs to go over and interview.
That's quite the statement, Oisín. That's quite the statement.
Somebody needs to go over and interview that man very quickly. So, because we thought he was maybe from a different club or whatever. So, this man on a regular basis would drive up, he'd watch Cross games, Cross training sessions, and he would drive straight back down the road. He was offered tea, curry, whatever we were having after the thing. Never bothered. He just maybe chatted to myself or Tony Mack, and he'd tip on down the road. Still be in contact with him, but it was amazing for somebody like us to think there's somebody coming up from Brian Morrisfit's club to have a look at our training, because he'll always text me. He'll always say that that's proper football youth boys are playing.
And it's funny because he's still involved in the club. He's in charge of the club at the moment with us, and he still travels up and he still takes home drills from what you do above. And this is how the drills you were doing, the kicking drills, and he brings them down. And this for Jordy, he travels everywhere. He's football obsessed. He goes everywhere with football, and like that, he's a fierce fondness for you boys up there. So
it's very fond of him as well.
Yeah, but you've tipped at something there that I think really matters as well. It's not just the players, and it's not just the actual coaches on a particular team. It's the whole atmosphere around the club, and there are so many successful clubs seem to me to have really top quality officers, really top quality volunteers helping out in a whole lot of different ways. And actually, Oisín, I was thinking about this earlier. Your mother made a brilliant point. I met your mother about 20 years ago. Somebody made a brilliant point to me when you were in the middle of your run, and the point was how much money it cost the town to keep the whole thing going. And by that, obviously, you had to curry after your dinner, or you're going traveling, or it takes money to go on a bus to Croke Park, or to do all of these things. It requires a lot of people to raise that money and people to contribute that money. So it works that's only a very small section of it, but without it, the rest of it doesn't go.
Yeah, and even for supporters and that, following you around the country. I mean, the credit union was a godsend at that time, and when you're on that run, nobody wants to miss anything. Nobody wants to miss out. Nobody wants to not be there. But I think it's a lot easier to raise a few quid whenever things are going rightly, rather than when you're trying to get things up to that level. But when you actually get up to that level, the money is something which just sorts itself out, I suppose. But yeah, it takes huge fundraising for years. Like my mum and there's probably 6, 7, 8 maybe others who run the club lotto and still run it. and they call it Lotto Mafia. You don't enter the club, you don't interfere with anything they do. They do it. They give you, the money's there at the end of the week, and you just roll on, and that has kept the club going for years and years.
We can't move on from talking about clubs, and we will be talking in a minute about intercounty management, but we can't move on from this without saying well done to Tony on Douglas's stunning achievement, minor football and minor hurling championships. Tony, I know you were captain, or you were manager, not captain, of the minor. That would be quite the operation. The manager of the minor football team. How many of those players will play senior football for Douglas?
Oh, we were down in the club Monday night after the final, and I would say that was the entire topic of conversation, because Douglas as a club have an unflattering history of doing things at underage and not carrying it through to senior. They've never won a senior championship in hurling or football. Why does it happen? There's so many reasons. I'm sure they're replicated in cities and big towns all over the place. Obviously, the dual code is an issue. It was a challenge this year. I mean, we had in the panel, Paul, I think we had something like 18 dual players. On the starting 15 last Monday night, we had 9 or 10 dual players who had played the hurling final the previous Monday, like literally 7 days ago. I think a huge debate at the moment is what's happening at under 17, under 18, or not happening, as the case may be. Like this Douglas team that I was involved in is an exceptional group of young fellas. And I mean, exceptional group of young fellas. There isn't a bad apple in the entire group. Their work ethic is unbelievable, which is unusual for 17-year-olds nowadays that don't have the same focus and concentration span. Their work ethic is fantastic. They really, really do. But a huge concern for me, having put the last 2.5 years in with them as coach, is where do they go now? There's no under 18 structure as we stand for these lads next year. And, you don't start throwing around glib phrases like golden generation and all that kind of stuff, because, there's all sorts of golden generations that around in clubs and counties that never come to fruition. But there's a very special group in that club at the moment. And I'm genuinely worried, concerned for what happens them next year. A, they're not physically able to play senior. B, they're probably not good enough to play senior. And C, they're actually not allowed to play senior as the rules currently stand. There's an age grade committee which has been sitting in Croke Park and has reported, and you saw the results of their suggestions last weekend, none of which are satisfactory in my point of view. There's no pathway, there's no proper direction, there's no proper leadership. There has to be an under 18 grade, a structured, properly outfitted under 18 grade locally and nationally next year. I have a group of young lads who are in 5th year. Now, they're only in 5th year. They are going to basically go into 2023 with no leaving cert and no hurling or football. The absurdity of that, I mean, in fairness, I know I've been banging a drum about it. Ciara O'Kane, in fairness, Oisín in the Irish News, has been banging a drum about it as well, and very, very eloquently, I might say. I just cannot understand why more clubs are not absolutely hammering the table over this. I think it is a massive, massive issue for the future of the GAA.
I agree. I also think that the opportunity to fix this was in the split season. It offers it entirely. It means that you can allow players still have their leaving cert times where they can do stuff. But the idea, so it seems to me that a lot of the reason why it was moved younger was because intercounty or people playing minor were involved in leaving cert at the time that matches were being organised. So that's so easily fixed if that's the primary reason. No logical explanation has been offered to me, certainly, or that I can see, apart from that. So this is now relatively easy to fix. It is I agree with you, it's an absolute failure of leadership, and it is a classic example of the GAA getting in its own way, and it will cause players leaving the association who will drift.
Correct. And I think, in fairness, Paul, in fairness to the decision makers, it is fair to point out that the primary sticking point, the key crux in this, is the decoupling from senior hurling and football. There is a view that even if it goes to under 18, those players should still not be allowed to play senior. I agree with that in the context of a Douglas. But if you're talking about, as Brian was talking about, a rural team who rely on 17 and 18-year-olds to actually fill their senior team, then you're punishing small clubs as well. So to be fair to the decision makers, there is a crux at the heart of this. Everybody that I've spoken to thinks it's an absolute given that there's an under 18 competition next year. Should be at inter-county, but certainly at club. The key issue is, are those players allowed to play in the adult grades within their club or not?
Yeah, do you know what? It's really interesting to watch what's happened up here in Dublin on, say, for example, camogie and ladies Gaelic football, where there is no such bar. So I trained the ladies Gaelic football minor team in Plunketts, and girls from that team played adult football for the senior team in the club, and played 16-year-olds and played senior camogie in the club as well. And it was a real problem to manage it in terms of availability for training and fixtures. We worked it out fine, with really good managers and all of those teams, and it was fine. But our team would not be senior camogie if it didn't have access to those 4 or 5 minor girls who were fundamental to them developing. So I see that. I do see that. But there's a huge, the amount of collateral damage to the association in fixing that one particular problem is really enormous.
It is. I think in any scenario, I mean, with that minor team that you're just talking about in Douglas, the key, there was a lot of challenges there, but the key effectively was that the structure, Oisín, with the same management teams for both sides. The only difference was Willie Coveney coached the hurlers and I coached the footballers. That was the only difference. So we were able to work hand in glove together, and you need that, and you would need that. But I'm not certain, Paul, it would be as readily available in clubs between underage and adult. And I've seen it. I've been senior manager, and I've seen it happen whereby you say to a minor lad, you know, I need you in the squad next week for a county league game. And the manager says, no, you're not getting him. Sorry, he's a minor first. We have first call on him. So, let's not simplify it to the point of saying it's just a click of a fingers and it's sorted. But you're right, Paul. The issue is so fundamental to the future and to the future numbers playing hurling and football at 18 years of age that it has to be urgently sorted. And I mean urgently, as in this winter.
Oh, this has to be done by the end of November. This has to be in place by the end of November.
It does.
To do it any other way is a nonsense. We want to move. Listen, Tony, we're graced here to have 2 inter-county managers / coaches with us today, and we need to talk about the fact. I want to talk about, first of all, though, 2 counties that don't, or two counties that don't have managers. First of all, Donegal and Roscommon. Oisín, why do Donegal and Roscommon not have managers?
They don't seem people. First thing is that they don't seem to be knocking down the door in order to get the job, in order to look for the job. I also think that I just think it's poorly done by county board, to be honest. I can't see any reason why, you couldn't just, put it out there, get your candidates together, or if you really want, if you go about it properly, go and get your top 3 people and have a go at it. But so if I believe what I'm hearing is that Donegal have approached a number of candidates and nobody seems interested in it. I mean, there's a couple of
Roscommon, from what I've heard.
similarly to Roscommon. So there's a couple of different things with that. First of all, the level of the job in hand, as in time, logistics with Donegal, obviously. So if you're looking for a Donegal manager, the first thing you're thinking about is probably suit somebody in Donegal. You know, when you think about the amount of travel and all those sort of things, think of where they're situated as far as their training ground. So that's the first thing. But surely it's an attractive enough job for an up and coming manager. Has to be.
Division 1 football.
Division 1 football, team that have underperformed, underachieved, and yet still have an unbelievable pool of players to choose from. So that gives you an idea.
Division 1
gives you an idea, though, Paul, about what's involved. I think that's the big thing that's the big takeaway for me, is that when Roscommon, Donegal, and Monaghan, the three of them struggled, and I've been around a lot of corners, and Monaghan have only sorted their stuff out in the last week or so. It gives you an idea of what's involved and how inter-county management maybe just isn't as attractive as it once was.
100% agree. Sorry, Paul, go on.
Sorry, I just want to ask Oisín, what did you think of the Mayo process?
Got myself in a bit of bother with this one. But I don't care. I'll stick to my guns and say that at the end of the day, the process was something I'd never been involved in before, so I didn't have a clue what was happening. So I was involved in the process in that I was part of a backroom team, but other than that, I didn't really have any involvement in the interview process, or I never actually spoke to anybody from the county board or anything like that. So Ray did he put together the team. He did the interview, and
This is Ray Dempsey.
Yeah, Ray Dempsey, and they obviously went a different road with Kevin McStay. So it was fairly straightforward from my point of view. And how did I find the process? As I say, it was fairly simple for me because I wasn't overly involved in it. I had a number of conversations with Ray, met him a couple of times, and then we agreed that we would go forward. Or I agreed that I would go forward as part of his backroom team, and that was it. The next I heard was that we hadn't got the job, or that Ray hadn't got the job, so therefore I didn't have a job.
Why did you want that job?
Why did I want that job? It was probably a phone call I wasn't expecting, first and foremost, but it was something that I thought about for a long time, and probably a lot of coaches have. Realistically, a lot of coaches have watched Mayo and thought, I can do better. We all think we can do better. So I suppose that's I would argue that I had seen more of Mayo than I had of my own county. I watched them, I'd studied them, through analysis and just through curiosity.
Did you know what you wanted to do with them?
Yeah. Now, whether the other people in the backroom team would have agreed with me or not, that could have been a sticking point, but I knew exactly what I wanted to do.
And if you don't mind me saying so, the logic of your taking the Mayo coaching position was fairly radically turned on its head the following week when you were announced as the manager of Wicklow.
Well, there'd been a conversation in the interim period. I had spoken to Wicklow a number of years ago about the possibilities, and just didn't really suit me. We were just after the arrival of the third child had put a dampener on me doing anything other than something local club-wise, and that conversation had done before. I had stayed in contact and probably piqued my interest, I suppose, in Wicklow a lot, and again started to watch a little bit more of them. I started finding out a lot more about them, and sat down, had a conversation, and took that conversation back to the house. And,
How did you do that?
That's the bit I want to know about.
Well, I bought a flower. No, I didn't. To be honest, I suppose like it started with the Mayo thing, and myself and Doreen had sat down, and we had this conversation had been had before, and it also we'd also gone down a good way of the road of almost doing something before and then just realizing that it wasn't gonna work. But this time around, there's a lot of things that are probably in a better place. The kids are a bit older, and how did it work? To be honest, I broached the subject and I got a reaction that I didn't think I was going to get. She seemed happy with it. I mean, look, she supported everything I've ever wanted to do, and if she knows if I really want to do something, at the end of the day, without being a selfish git, I'm probably going to do it. So I had a real inkling that this is what I wanted to do. I've done projects before, and I went into DKT when they're at a very low ebb and tried to build that up, and probably have had a history and probably doing stuff like that. So that's why I wanted to do it.
And you really are starting its structures from the base from Division 4.
Yeah, no, it's a low base, and I think it can improve quickly. I'm not going to say that. So if I heard an inter-county manager coming on saying this is a project, I say absolutely, that's bullshit. He's bluffing, but there is a certain amount of that in it. But also, I
have to win matches.
But I also think that it can improve quickly.
How long is it door to door, Oisín, for training?
It's 2 hours to the training ground.
No, that's not too bad.
Now, somebody from Wicklow has heard me say that before and said, "Yeah, in a helicopter." But no, it is 2 hours without breaking any major speed limits. It's 2 hours door to door, so that's 4 hours before you do anything. So it's a huge commitment.
And will you travel? Will you actually stay overnight, or will you actually come back?
No, I'll travel.
Will you?
Yeah.
Welcome here anytime, Oisín. Great to join us.
Thanks. Oh.
Bryan, on the other hand, you're not starting from Division 4. You're starting from the under-20 feeder team to the All-Ireland champions. Why are you doing this?
I think the last time we were on one of these podcasts, the question was raised, would I ever think of going to management? And I think straight off the bat I said no, I wasn't there. Yes, I was contemplating going back playing football myself at a club level, but sometimes I just got a phone call from Tomas
O'Shea.
Tomas rang me about it, and when someone kind of
Paul wants to know the dates on that. During the Offaly situation.
I was thinking the same thing, Brian. Be mindful now of what you're saying.
I know, yes. No, it was well after that. Don't worry. There was no conflict.
It was a wiretap.
But look, the phone call came, and you know what? Sometimes when it was out of the blue, wasn't expected in the slightest. But when an opportunity like that kind of comes knocking your doorstep, sometimes it can be very hard to say no to it. I watched under-20s last year. Declan was involved with them. I seen the 2 or 3 of their tour games, and I knew there was a good bulk of that group. I think there's 14 of last year's squad involved. I would have been involved with the South Kerry minors 3 years ago, so they'd be the under-20s coming up now. We went to a county semi-final, lost to St. Brendan's. So I've seen a couple of that. We played a couple of challenge games. I've seen a lot of the players on place, so I knew there was a good crux of a team there from that point of view. But it was just like that again, similar to Oisín. I had to sit down, talk to my wife Isa in relation to the involvement. We've 2 young kids. Just started school. He'll be 5 in September. Dylan is only 14 months, so. Again, there was probably a lot of logistics with regards to where training would be based, but I suppose I'm lucky enough from the point of view that we'll be based kind of and working in Castle Island. So commuting, I'm already up that part of the county for work purposes. So training would be okay to get to. So I just think it was both the commitment. I think obviously Ethan knows the commitment involved from the point of view of a player's perspective of being away 2 nights a week and then weekends and whatnot. So we did discuss all that, and again, look, we just felt it was something that was going to work for us. But I just think it's a great stepping stone. You're involved in our 20s, nice age group, I feel. Going into a senior setup is probably a lot more difficult from my perspective with no experience and trying to probably deal with fellas that I probably might have been involved with, either playing or playing against, might have been slightly a bit difficult. But playing with the under 20s or against coaching under 20s, it was probably always something like I saw myself going. If I was to start off, I'd like to start off with the youth and maybe go in there. I just think you'd have a bit more of a chance to work on and get them developed. Whereas senior, you're landed with them. So I suppose that was one of my big things, was to see if I could get involved in that side of this at the young age.
What do you think? What do you think you'll bring to this?
I'd like to. Well, I suppose. Look, I'm not involved in the coaching role, and there's a selector, but I'd like to bring my knowledge of the game from the point of view of, obviously, from an attacking perspective as a forward, and maybe work with the forwards from the point of view of what I expect from them with regards to work rate, with regards to movement off the ball, and likewise, even from the point of view just having my experience of what it takes to win at that level. I suppose that's the one thing I'd like to just bring that bit of experience to these fellas. And I suppose if I could talk to myself when I was 20 years of age or 19 years of age of what I know now, what I'd be telling myself back then would be completely different to what I knew back then. So it's an opportunity for me to be able to sit down to these fellas, talk to a couple of these fellas, give them the experience of a fella that has travelled this road before them, and maybe not make the same mistakes that I made, and probably, hopefully, get these fellas to try and buy into what you want them to do. But again, look, it's not just about me. It's collectively as the management group what we want to bring to the table. It's not just what I'm going to bring to it. It's going to be the whole group about how we're going to approach it from the point of view of what players we have available to us, what way we're going to go about playing football, how we want to play football, and just probably take it from there and play football with the hand we're dealt with the players we have and who's available to us. Now, it's a difficult task, I think. Under 20s, I think this is going back to where we had the difficulties as we spoke about our underage. You're dealing with players now that have come out of minor football at 17 years of age, going to play under 20 football. That's a massive age group of a gap there of 3 years. So fellas coming out of minor, you're saying they're not ready for senior football. Are they ready for inter-county football at 20 years of age? There's a big step up. We have fellas that are going to be playing school football, and you fellas that are playing fresher football, and you fellas playing Sigerson. You have fellas that are playing club football but aren't on their senior county championship club side. Some fellas aren't making their divisional sides in Kerry. So there's a big scope, I suppose, of where we can't get to see these fellas playing at their own age level, at their own group. They're trying to play senior football, they're playing school football, they're playing Sigerson. There's a massive different level of where fellas are playing football. So I thought the big thing for us is to try and get these fellas together and to see what they're like playing at their own level against their own age group with their own standards. So that's what I'm looking forward to see where these fellas are really at.
Do you care? Kerry haven't won an All-Ireland under 20 or under 21 as it was then since 2008.
Eight, yeah.
Yeah. Does that matter? Are you prepping them for senior, or are you trying to win an under 20? And you can say both.
No, to be honest, I would say we're prepping to win an All-Ireland under 20. I think that's what it is. I think I know the county board have their own procedures in place with Clayson and for development of underage footballers from minor to under 20 to senior, simply because that there's that such a gap we have now from underage to senior. It's very hard to bridge it, but no, our main focus is to win the All-Ireland under 20. It's straight out. That's exactly what it is. It's important because I think this is a massive age group that we have. It's not just in Kerry, but it's throughout, that you have these fellas that are 20 years of age, and you would like to think that they've got their whole footballing career ahead of them. but it's a massive step to go into county senior level. And I think that what we're trying to do is that we're going to get these fellas ready to compete and show them that if you want to play senior football, this is what it takes. And you're going to start it here under 20. You're going to develop yourself. You're going to have to try and win an All-Ireland along the process. Get them into the good habits. Get them into the habits of winning, as we spoke about earlier, about setting the standards of what's required. And I think if we can do that, and I think even if we look back, success, I think we'll have about carry the 5 in a row minor team that were there. A good bulk of those players have come on to senior football. And I just think that link that the under 20s, we haven't won it since 2008. And I'd like to think that if we can bridge that gap and maybe start winning a couple of All-Irelands, we'll hopefully see a few more players getting the breakthrough. But I suppose, look, that's not our job at the moment. Our job is purely to go in and try and win an All-Ireland with this age group.
With that, I think we'll finish on that note. We will be back in a few weeks. Well, some of us will be back in a few weeks. Oisín, I know you've been on kind of a farewell tour of podcasts and television studios. It's like the Rolling Stones in its breath. But on a personal, I think you're going to come back to us as often as you can. But on a personal note, I'd just like to say it's been an absolute pleasure over the last 3 years to do this with you. And you'll be badly missed by, I think.
You promise you wouldn't cry.
No, but if you look behind the door there's flowers about to walk through. You can pretend you got them for Dorina, it's fine. No, but it was been an absolute pleasure, and we'll talk to you soon.
And I would just let me add in that, Paul. Well, obviously, yeah, he's providing the bit of true quality and analysis in this group for sure. But you're only out as long as Wicklow are still in the championship, Oisín. So can we set our clocks by that?
You can. We could be long. We could be in it longer than you think, though.
Good stuff. Good stuff.
That's the way to talk about it. Thank you to Larry Ryan for running this podcast, to Raf Rocket, to Jack Neville, to Tony Leen, to everyone at Examiner Sport. A huge thanks to Brian and again to Tony for joining us today, and especially to Oisín for today and for the last 3 years. Bemi Charnash Galua.
Thanks, lads.
A grain of rice is going to tip the scale. Just remember that, lad.
There's a small bit of a needle there.
Come on, Mayo, you've got to get Andy Moran into the game.
Listen back to Eden, and now they're really rolling.